15 seconds. Here comes Mitchell. Go Bear! Utah takes the lead.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 56. I am your host, as always, Tyler King. Hope everybody is having a really good holiday season. We're in between that weird week of the year in between Christmas and New Year's, recording here on December 29th. Wasn't sure what kind of episode we'd have on the feed today. Obviously, it was going to be NBA with a whole bunch of college games. With conference games really starting up next week, we'll have a big Big 12 preview on the feed later this week, with Big 12 games officially getting underway this weekend. Mountain West play resumes this week after I think every team in the conference has played at least one game. But the only one college basketball note I did want to make was before we get to talking here about the NBA is want to give a quick shout out to Northern Colorado for an epic win over Colorado on Sunday afternoon up in Boulder. I was at that game. First time since 1936 that the Bears have beaten the Big Bad Buffs. And it was a win that felt like it's been coming for a couple years for Coach Steve Smiley, who has been a guest on this podcast. Is an awesome guy, has done a great job up at UNC since he's really been there for about a decade now as an assistant. The last 5 or 6 years as the head coach up there, has done a terrific job. And like I said, it felt like they've been banging on the door for this win over CU the last couple of years. When they had Dalton Connect, they kind of gave them CU a scare a couple years ago. Last year, they were undermanned and still took the Buffs to double overtime. And this year, Quinn Danker, just an absolutely incredible performance. Career high 33 points. He broke his hand a couple weeks ago. Wasn't supposed to be back nearly this quickly, but he was a little bit of a Christmas miracle for the Bears. Their leading scorer getting him back, and they bounced back from a 2-game losing streak, which they were competitive in. They lost a close game to Texas Tech and then dropped a disappointing one to Denver, another game I was at up in Greeley. But just want to give a shout out to UNC for that win over the Buffs because I think this Bears team has got a real chance to win the Big Sky. They were co-regular season champions in the Big Sky last year, just came up short in the Big Sky tournament championship game, losing to Montana, trying to return to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011 for UNC. So good chance to do that. And I'm sure that win over CU yesterday will allow them to have a lot of momentum going into conference play, which begins this week in the Big Sky as well. So without further ado, we are going to be talking, like I said, about the NBA on today's show and going to be talking about the Utah Jazz. I wasn't sure when the next time I talk about the Jazz is because they were in Denver last week on the last Monday, a week ago from today on Monday, the 22nd. And every time the Jazz are in town, obviously I want to go watch the team in person because they only get to come to Denver a couple times a year. But of course, I've got my notepad out. I'm ready to take all these notes, and it's 19-0 before you can blink. So was a little bit bummed that didn't get more of a competitive game. But since then, Jazz lost the following night to Memphis at home. But then this past weekend, back-to-back wins on a back-to-back against two of the best teams in the NBA, stunningly beating Detroit at home on Friday. And then the following night, a really, really impressive win over the red-hot San Antonio Spurs, who were the talk of the league after Christmas Day with their great win over the Thunder, the defending champions. Spurs had beaten them 3 times in a 12-day span, I think. So the Jazz go on their home, go to San Antonio, beat maybe the hottest team in the NBA, and it's just a really, really surprising back-to-back performance on the back-to-back for the Jazz. And to help us talk about this Utah team is a guy who we had on last month, or I guess earlier this month. It's still December, but a couple weeks ago, and that is Chandler Holt from KSL Sports. Chandler, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you joining us during the holiday period here. Hope you're having a good time back home, spending time with some family. But we gotta have you on to talk about this Jazz back-to-back performance. Like I said, it was again in both games the Keyonte George and Lauri Markkanen show. Both those guys playing at their best in both those games. Just how surprised were you, and how much fun did you have watching those two games for Utah this past weekend?
Yeah, especially that San Antonio game. It was ridiculous. Yeah. I love, I'm a basketball enjoyer. I love watching Victor Wembanyama play. And I think it was 32 points in that game, his first start since coming back from injury. But yeah, Lauri Markkanen and Keyonte George, that is the duo for the Jazz right now. I think it is 11 times this year they have scored 25 plus each in the same game, and the Jazz are 8-3 in those games.
It's
So
the most by
like,
any duo in the league, I think, too.
yes. So it's basically the Jazz go as they go. And that's kind of interesting when you talk about Keyonte George, because in past years, maybe his biggest problems were efficiency and consistency. And like, we're not talking about, he isn't Kyrie Irving level of efficient yet, but he's levels and levels more consistent. It's like, I absolutely think he should be a front runner for most improved player in the NBA. I looked this up and I want to say it's about 60% of most improved players are on 500 or better teams, but it's not so overwhelming of a stat that Keyonte shouldn't be in that conversation.
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. That was going to be my point exactly, because I wanted to talk a lot about Keyonte George on this episode. Last time we had you on, we talked a lot about Ace Bailey, who, he had a couple games in the starting lineup at that point, had been playing well. He left the game against the Pistons and then didn't play in the game against San Antonio the other day. So, just kind of an up and down rookie year as expected for Ace Bailey. But Keyonte George is easily the story of the Jazz season this year, despite Lauri Markkanen kind of returning to all-star form. This is not unexpected because we saw him play really well Eurobasket in the summer, and I thought he was going to have a big year. But Keyonte has just completely blown me away with his improvement here in year 3. And I fully agree with you. I think he should be the front runner for most improved player at this point of the season, because just looking across the league, I don't know a player that has shown more or has taken a bigger leap than he has. And I think you're all over it with the efficiency stats. Like this, the biggest reason I was so down on Keyonte after his first 2 years was because I really thought he could be a guy that could live in the paint and could live in the mid-range and could create separation as a lead ball handler. And he just wasn't doing that. And now this year, he's become I've heard other people describe him this way, and I fully agree. He's just a walking paint touch. Obviously, the free throw rate is up, but he's attacking the rim way more and being way more aggressive when he does it. And he's finishing way more efficiently in that 3 foot to 10 foot range. I think he's up over 50% shooting in that 3 to 10 foot range, and he's taking more shots in that range as well. Where last year he was under 25% of his shots were coming from that range, and he was about 42% on those close range shots. And this year, I think he's at 29%, and he's shooting over 52% on those kinds of shots. So it's all about that kind of efficiency and just the fact that he has become this. And the question I wanted to ask you, Chandler, is like, is this the most important thing or the biggest thing the Jazz could have asked for this year, even ahead of getting a top 3 pick? Because obviously coming into the year, that was probably the number one goal, was get a top 3 pick with how loaded this next draft class is. And with the fact that the Jazz, the pick is top 8 protected. But I just think Keyonte's improvement here and becoming a legit guy, a guy you can build around, which obviously we weren't sure if that was going to be the case after his first 2 seasons. This might be more important to the Jazz future as a franchise than anything they could get in the draft next year. Do you agree with me? What Keyonte has done this year is that important?
Absolutely. I think that it's important on so many different levels as well. First of all, coming into this year, of course, with the Jazz being in the spot that they are, or at least where we expected them to be before this season started, we were like, okay, which of the top draft prospects would fit the best for the Jazz? And I said Darren Peterson, because there's nothing but question marks for the Jazz at the guard position. And now you don't have nearly as many question marks. Now it's like, is Keyonte your starting point guard, or is he your starting shooting guard? And it's like, that is the only thing. He is proving that he's an all-star level player. And another thing is, this third-year jump, you see a lot of third-year jumps. A lot of people think it's sort of linear progression for players in the NBA. It isn't like that a lot of times. A lot of players, like, what's stopping Keyonte George from being like a Devin Booker? What's stopping him from averaging 30 points a game in 2 years? What's stopping him from being a 50, 40, 90 guy at this point?
Yeah.
Those are real questions that you have to ask, because the jump from last year to this year is ridiculous. So it's like, and he's only 22 years old, and he's pretty freshly 22 years old as well.
Yeah, he turned 22 in November. Yeah, he doesn't turn 23 till the start of next season. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like another, like, now he's going to be the number 2 option, debatably the number 1 option. I think this is a different conversation. I think there's a real conversation that Keyonte George might be the Jazz's best player right now. With a whole season as a top 2 option, and then another, if he can duplicate whatever he did in this last offseason that made him able to make this jump, I really do think the sky is the limit for him. And to answer your question specifically about, is this more important than a draft pick or whatever else for the Jazz? Funny enough, on the Jazz podcast that I do, I think it was a week or 2 ago, we got asked, would you rather have what we've seen from Keyonte or keep your top 8 pick this next year. And I said, if you said like guaranteed top 3 pick versus what Keyonte's done, that's a bit tougher. But regardless, I'm taking Keyonte because you have an all-star caliber player on your roster right now. Like Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ, all these guys have all of the potential in the world, but they're not an all-star in the NBA on your team right now. Not many. There are teams who go years without ever sniffing an all-star. So I don't know if he'll actually get that nod this year, but I think that the pieces are finally starting to come together for the Jazz after 3 years of rebuilding and I think that it's starting to make sense because of Keyonte.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think it's going to be tough for him to get an all-star nod this year. I think last time I went to the exercise. I mean, the West guards are just so loaded that it's still it's been the thing for basically the entire century. The West guards position has been loaded. And I think I had Lauri on the outside looking in, one of the first few guys I left off of my all-stars in the West, just because I mean there's a lot of guys. But I think you're exactly right. Like Keyonte and becoming this kind of guy, I've seen people recently compare him to what Donovan Mitchell was doing in year 3, and now that was a better Jazz team back then, and Donovan was showing that he was capable of being the number 1 guy on a good team. And obviously, with the way the Jazz have been playing for most of the year, they're still not. They're kind of a fringe playing team is basically what we call them at this point. But I think what Keyonte has done is real. And you just look at the last 10 games in particular, 26 points per game, six assists, 4 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field, 42% on threes on over 7.5 attempts per game in these last 10 games. And he's also shooting over 91% from the free throw line on 8 attempts per game. He's up there with the league leaders in terms of free throw attempts now this season. I mean, he's just, like I said, everything he's done has been super impressive. And if you look at the duos across the league, I know this is something Jazz fans have really been trying to point out the last couple of days with Lauri and Keyonte together. Like, I think there are only 2 duos in the NBA, or 2 teams in the NBA that have 2 players in the top 20 in scoring. Lakers, obviously, with Luka, who's leading the league in scoring, and then Austin Reeves, who's also averaging like 27 points per game.
Yeah.
But then I think Keyonte and Lauri are one of the other groups, and then the other duo is of the 3 is Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. So I think I just think it kind of just goes to show how good those 2 guys have been. Now, granted, the rest of the roster is still going to have a lot of work to do over the next couple of years, but these guys are real building blocks, like you said, and Keyonte still only 22. Now, Lauri obviously is smack dab in the middle of his prime. He's 28 years old. He'll be 29 next summer. There is that aspect of it, but I think the fact that Keyonte has shown this is shown what he has this year is a real positive step for the Jazz front office, because now they have, regardless of what happens with the pick this year, and obviously we can talk about that too, like the Jazz right now, I think are 9th right now in terms of lottery odds. So would need some luck to keep the pick there. I think there are teams behind them that could easily pass them. Prior to the Jazz's 2-game winning streak, they look like they were trending toward, really trying to keep the pick with some of the maneuvers they were making with the guys playing in and out of the lineup and stuff like that. But I think Brooklyn's played really well this month. Ironically, the Clippers maybe could finally get it going. I think there's a couple teams that could leapfrog the Jazz and keep them in the bottom 8 and give them the chance they need to keep the pick. But Keyonte over everything, I think, is the most important sign for the Jazz this year. And I was just curious from your perspective, like what about him as a person do you think too? What have you seen in the last couple of years that makes him feel like he could be a guy that not just wants to be, but has the potential and personality to be a key franchise guy?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, and I think I said this the last time we talked, is that there has been a massive maturity jump for Keyonte. And he was never like a specifically immature guy, but coming into this year at media day and just everything he has shown, locker room interviews, et cetera, he gets it now. Like, he gets that his spot isn't guaranteed. He knows he has to work every day, and he knows that like it is a dog eat dog world. Like in the NBA, like say the Jazz get lucky, jump into the top 3. If Darren Peterson's the best available, the Jazz are going to take Darren Peterson, and now you're competing with him. Like, even it doesn't matter if you're coming off an all-star.
I think those 2 guys will play really well together, because I think Darren Peterson's pretty versatile. But
yes.
I think you were saying earlier whether Keyonte's a 1 or a 2. I think if you put Darren Peterson, I think those guys could be pretty interchangeable at those spots. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But point being is that nothing's guaranteed, and he gets that now. Like, before he was like, okay, he was basically in his rookie year, he was the starting point guard for the Jazz. The silver lining of that was that he improved his point guard skills a lot. And I think he isn't the playmaker he is now. What is he, around 7-8 assists a game without that experience in year one? But I think it might have also put something in his head like, oh yeah, first year in the NBA and I'm already here. I'm like that. I'm a starting point guard already. And then it took him in year two being the sixth man, getting moved to the bench. And I think that combined with the second year and then all the work in this last offseason sort of meshed together perfectly. And we're seeing the result of all the hard work. I do want to touch on the pick for a second because I'm constantly in circles with Jazz fans. I read all the discourse about the team, and all of the diehard fans are very, very in tune with the reverse standings, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And they are not a fan of the 12-19 record. I believe on the broadcast they said that the 12th win last year came in February for the Jazz.
Yeah, it was either late January or early February or something like that. I remember seeing that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So way ahead of schedule. It's not even the new year yet. 2 months ahead of where the Jazz were when they reached 12 wins. But the Mavericks last year, what were they? The 13th, 14th team in the lottery, and they jump all the way up to number one.
They were 9th or 10th, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah. They were 9th or 10th. I mean, that is the thing with all these teams jumping up. I mean, San Antonio, I think, also had they were like 8th or 9th last year, and the Sixers, I think, were 6th or 7th because they had to keep that pick as top 6 protected last year. They jumped up in the top 30. Yeah, all 3 of the top 3 teams from last year in the draft were not in the top 5 or bottom 5. What do you say in terms of lottery odds? Yeah.
And the thing about the Jazz right now is we have seen so many teams jump into the top 4 in recent years. And of course you want to keep your pick. If you can add a top 8 pick to your team, that is a good thing, of course. But with already 10 guys under 23 years old on your roster right now, how much is a 6th, 7th, or 8th pick really going to help you? So if you're just somewhere between the 8 and 12 in the reverse standings, and then lottery night comes, you're getting a top 4 or you're going to lose it. I don't think losing the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th pick is a big deal. So I don't know. I see where Jazz fans are coming from. Like, you are seeing all of these great signs from people on your roster right now, and you're thinking, oh, we have Keyonte, who's a borderline all-star. We have Lauri Markkanen, who's in the middle of his prime. Ace Bailey has shown flashes. And then if we add a top 3-4 guy, boom, now we turn it around completely. But like I said, losing a 9th to the 14th pick, I don't think that pick was going to really make waves for you that much. So I think the position that the Jazz are finding themselves in, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Of course, it would be good if you could see these Keyonte flashes, see these Ace Bailey flashes, show that you could win some of these games and still be at the top or bottom, I guess, of the reverse standings. But of course, the front office knows that they have the protection on their pick better than any of the fans do. So I'm not saying blindly trust your favorite team's front office, but I don't know. I think I have more faith in where the Jazz are currently positioned than most people.
Yeah, I do too. I think they have shown in the last couple of years that they're at least. I mean, I know that there's probably going to be some people that are questioning some of the picks they made. Keyonte was an end of lottery or late. Right after the lottery, I think he was picked 16, 17 range, somewhere around there. So they have shown that they can find guys. I know people will find issues with the Taylor Hendricks pick at this point, the Cody Williams pick at this point, but I think they have shown that they can find guys, find value at other picks as well. Obviously, getting Kyle Filipowski when they did. Isaiah Collier was a late pick. I think he's an NBA player, despite having an up and down second year with kind of being in and out of the lineup and all that kind of stuff. I think the guy I actually wanted to ask you about next, because he played so well against San Antonio, was Walt Clayton, who was, obviously a guy who picked in that 18 to 20 range last year as well. Just does it feel like, obviously Keyonte and Lauri have been what they are this year? Like you said, both of them are borderline all-stars, and Keyonte is trending upward to a point where, you don't really want to set a ceiling on what he could become over the next couple of years. You just want to see what he could grow into, because this year 3 has been so impressive. But who among the other young guys, because like you said, there are a lot of guys under the age of 23 on this roster, who has impressed you the most? Because obviously it's kind of been a whole lot of inconsistent playing time for the majority of them as Will Hardy tries to piece together these games as they go along.
As you mentioned, Ace Bailey has been up and down. I still have a lot of faith in Ace Bailey. I think it's a great sign that he does the little things. And if anything, the shooting and scoring is the thing that hasn't quite come around yet. Bryce Sensabaugh has been maybe the most interesting player on this Jazz roster other than the top guys, because I came in having him picked as like, oh, okay, 6-man probably for the Jazz if they're doing Jazz awards, and then maybe even most improved player because he was absolutely lighting it up in summer league. But like it's the thing for Bryce right now. If you're not playing defense, Will Hardy's going to take you out of the game. And it's like I don't expect Bryce to be a good defender, but when the effort isn't there, then I'm with Will Hardy. Like if you're not showing effort, then you got to get out of here.
He can't just be a guy that comes in hoping to chuck threes up.
Yes, exactly. And I don't even really see him as necessarily a shot chucker. He is definitely a shot first guy, but I've also seen a lot of him getting into the paint and mid range this year. I love his offense, and I think he could be a very important piece off the bench going forward on maybe a competitive Jazz team in 3-4 years, however long it may be. But if the defense isn't there, then are you even an NBA player? Like maybe you turn into one of these guys who's a 9th man in a very specific situation, and like in the playoffs you get 5 minutes. But I don't know. I think he's an interesting player and still flashes from him, but remains to be seen. As you mentioned, Walt Clayton. Walt Clayton has been very interesting because he's very hit or miss. He has played in 27 games this year. Just has 6 points. And he'll have games like the other night where he's almost perfect from the field and dishing out and looking like clearly who should be the backup point guard for the Jazz. But I saw this, I wish I could get credit out, but someone was, it was a tweet that I saw. It was like the Jazz are going to have a very tough decision between Isaiah Collier and Walt Clayton to make in the coming years. And I do think that is going to be a decision that's have to be made. I don't think either of them have the versatility of Keyonte to maybe move down to the 2. And last time
I think Walt can play off ball at times, but he's more of you saw the other day, like you said, 17 points, 5 assists, perfect in the field. Like when he's at his best, he's kind of the guy running a show for the second unit.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I agree that maybe like we've seen Walt and Keyonte play together, for example, and they sort of just do like a switch off kind of thing. But defensively, that lineup is absolutely like disgraceful. It's awful. But I mean, I hate to say it, but I love to say it. Cody Williams has shown.
I was going to ask about him. Yeah.
The first 18 games from Cody Williams, I think, was better than all 82 or however many he played in his rookie year so far. Like some of the stuff we've seen from Cody is like, okay, like even if it's for a 4-game stretch, I could see why you were a top 10 pick. Like it's sort of coming around for Cody. He's put on some weight, and I think that a year under his belt has helped.
He was always a guy that was going to be a long-term project regardless. Yes. Like obviously I watched every one of his games at Colorado, covered him, during his lone year in college basketball. I saw people kind of giving up on him earlier this year because there were just some really rough statistics with Cody. And obviously the passivity out there, especially offensively, is something he still needs to work through. Although his G League numbers have been a lot better this year when he's played down there, really up that true shooting. And like I said, he's been more aggressive on that end. The other day against the Spurs, I thought that was such an encouraging performance for him. And I hope it's something that propels him going forward because he looked like he belonged out there. And that's always been the biggest thing for Cody is when he looks like he belongs and he's playing confidently. Like you see why, like you said, the Jazz picked him as took him in the lottery, even in a bad draft. Like, he only shot the ball like a couple times, 8 points, but he had 6 rebounds. He's a guy that's always going to compete his butt off defensively. That's something I think Will Hardy obviously respects out of him. But if any of these guys can, like you said, that are off the bench right now, can really start to play more consistently, that changes everything for the Jazz as well. Because it can't just be Keyonte and Lauri. It has to be, you're going to have to find 2 or 3 of these other guys, like whether it's Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier, Walt Clayton, Cody Williams, even Taylor Hendricks, who we haven't really talked about that much today. A couple of these guys are going to have to show that they're real building blocks going forward, because otherwise the Jazz are going to be in the position where they are this year, which is a frisky team at times with some really quality high-end talent, but the depth of the roster is kind of what's been dragging them down. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing to monitor over the next couple weeks and months.
Yes. I also want to touch on really quick Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks, after his injury last year, is such an interesting case because like I almost expect nothing from him. So anything you get from him is a positive. But I love the idea of what Taylor Hendricks could be. Like sort of a stretch 4, but he can guard probably 2 through 5. 3 and D, also can get downhill. I'm forgetting his name, but he went to the Suns 31st pick this last year.
Rasheer Fleming.
Rasheer Fleming. I saw a lot of Taylor Hendricks and Rasheer Fleming together, like that sort of mold of player.
Rasheer Fleming is more of he's got a quicker release, and he's just more of that's kind of all he does offensively is stand on the corner, shoot threes. Whereas I think Taylor's got more of a versatile game. But yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of the 6'10", long armed, kind of big body guys that can do a little bit of both on both ends.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that like if you get whatever the ceiling of Taylor Hendricks is, and I'm not saying he can, I don't ever see Taylor Hendricks being an all-star. I can see him being a very high level role player. But I think that sort of the bigger body, versatile 4 defender would be absolutely perfect to pair next to Walker Kessler on, again, looking at what a competitive Jazz team might look like. So again, after last year, after the injury, I don't have any expectations for him. I'm happy he's playing NBA basketball right now. But yeah, just this year, get healthy, get your confidence back, and we'll see going forward.
Yeah, he's a guy I was super interested to watch coming into the year as well. Because like you said, with that last year, the injury just being a wash for him, and I always kind of liked his upside coming out of the draft as well. I thought he was an intriguing prospect. But just looking ahead at the next couple games here for the Jazz, they've got Boston at home on Tuesday, which obviously they beat the Celtics earlier this year in Boston. That was back in early November. I think Yusuf Nurkic had a putback game winner in Boston during that game. Obviously, that's always a big game for Will Hardy because he knows that staff so well, was a member of the coaching staff there for a long time. And then they've got a decent 4-game road trip with the Clippers, Warriors, Blazers, and Thunder in there. So some tough games for the Jazz. And this is one thing I wanted to ask you. The last thing I want to ask you before I get you out of here today, Chandler, is like we had seen this kind of recipe the last couple of years with the Jazz where they were the overperforming. Obviously not last year. Last year was the lone exception where they were really bad from start to finish and were clearly trying to get that top pick and unfortunately fell to 5th in the lottery. But 2 years prior to that, it was a lot more with Lauri Markkanen. He had the 1 year where he was an all-star and won most improved player, where they're overperforming expectations through December and into January a little bit, and then really started to ease off the gas in February and March. Like the January could be the most important month for the Jazz here before they really take the foot off the gas. So I think the front office is going to realize how important keeping the pick is, even if, like you said, like even if it is that 8 to 9 range, like anything you can add to this core, I think would be really important. Like if you're keeping that pick top 8. So I think the front office will see that and maybe try to really ease the Jazz back into the bottom 8 of the standings at that point. But these next couple weeks will be really important. Like, what are you hoping to see from some of the younger guys on the roster as we go into January here in the new year with a lot of games on the schedule? Because I think it's 6 games in the next 9 or 10 days, and then after that, even there's the schedule just continues to get not more difficult, but there's a lot more games in the schedule. The travel gets a little bit different. There's a lot of road games this month. Just kind of talk me through what you're hoping to see these next couple weeks.
Taking you previewed the next week or two for the Jazz. Taking it further, 9 of their first 11 games to start the new year are on the road. So I'm with you. I think that it is going to sort of start coming back down to earth for the Jazz. I do think, especially if you had Walker Kessler this year, this could have been like a play-in team in the West.
Definitely. It's such an underrated aspect of the team because he was such a big reason for the hot start to the year, and obviously the leap he had made offensively to go with his stout defense. Like, yeah, if he was on the team and healthy, I think we wouldn't even be talking about the lottery. We'd be talking about the play-in and trying to creep into the top 8 potentially, I think, with this team.
And again, last year, and I think last year was a one-off, but like for the franchise, for the players, for everything. But with that being said, and I'm not wishing this, but if you have a Keyonte George or a Lauri Markkanen injury, even if it's for 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to lose most of the games whenever one of those two is not in the game.
You're milking it for all it's worth, too.
Yes. Because you already had Lauri gone, and I think, ironically, they won a couple of those games. But with Keyonte gone, then you're relying on probably Isaiah Collier as your starter, and it's just a lot of teams are giving Isaiah Collier the like Houston Rockets Russell Westbrook treatment, just guarding him like at the free throw line. And not only does that close off driving lanes, it closes off passing lanes. A lot of like Lauri Markkanen, for example, has extra defenders on him. But that's a bit off topic. I do think you'll see this team come back down to earth a little bit. I do trust that they'll fall probably between like 5 and 8 in the reverse standings.
That's probably the sweet spot if we're being honest. Like you take
Yes.
you take the positive you've had at this point of the year, but maybe you finish with the 6th or 7th best lottery odds, have a plus above 50% chance of keeping the pick. I think if we're trying to figure out what the sweet spot is, I think that's probably it right there, because I don't think anybody in the franchise, especially in the coaching staff, and especially some of the older guys on the roster, they didn't want to go through last year again. Like that was kind of a one-off thing where you have the worst record in franchise history. The Jazz have never really been a team that has been that bad. We talked about it in the summer when I had your colleague Ben Anderson on the podcast. We talked about it. Like the Jazz are not often a team picking the top 5. They don't want to be where they were last year. But I think it's just you got to try to do whatever you can to keep this pick this year and take the positives that you have had with Keyonte and Lauri kind of getting back to where he is and try to do what you can to go be a competitive team again next year.
And I think strength of schedule outside of like the last month of the year is kind of a weird stat because just based on conferences, you know who you're playing. But right now, the Jazz have the 6th easiest schedule left. With that being said, they have games against Indiana, Washington, 3 against New Orleans, Sacramento, the Clippers, who I think are starting to turn around. I don't think they'll really be in this conversation in a couple months, and 1 more against Brooklyn. And then you have the good teams, of course, but if you win some of those games, if you lose some of those games to some of those bottom feeders, then it's like, okay, they pick up a win. You're sort of closing the gap on both sides. And then I think that's sort of how you get to this spot. So when it comes time for those games, like I think you have the Clippers coming up pretty soon. Maybe that's
Thursday,
maybe that's a Lauri Markkanen groin injury management and a Yusuf Nurkic rest day, so we'll see what happens.
All right, Chandler, well, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast today to talk about that really exciting pair of games this weekend and talk through just what's kind of been an awesome season for the Jazz so far, at least from the perspective of getting what you have out of Keyonte George. I mean, it's just been super fun to watch, and I know we'll both be locked into what is going on over the next couple weeks with Utah, and I'm sure we'll catch back up at some point in 2026. So I appreciate you taking the time to hop on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for the invite.
Of course, anytime. All right, that'll do it for today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Thanks again to Chandler Holt from KSL Sports for joining us today. You can follow him over at Holt Sports over on Twitter. Listen to the Jazz Notes podcast with him and Ben Anderson over at KSL. I think you can find all that on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Same for our show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you prefer to listen, whether it, like I said, is Apple, Spotify, or if you prefer to watch all the episodes on my YouTube channel, wherever you prefer to listen or watch. All that is super appreciated by me. Make sure to leave a 5-star review, if it is on Apple or Spotify. Leave a comment. All that stuff helps us grow the show. Same thing over on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like the video. All that stuff is really, really helpful and really appreciated. So thanks again to Chandler Holt for joining us on today's episode. And thank you to all of you for listening here during the holiday season. And I hope everybody has a good new year and enjoys the week of basketball ahead.